What's up, everybody? You're in the machine. Step, hop, or float to the top of your mat. We hear that all the time in almost every vinyasa class, usually to get from down dog back up to standing. But what does it mean? This is a quick little tutorial on each to show you the proper alignment and body positioning and help you decide which one is for you. Let's do it. Step it up. Oh, I did it. First of all, stepping it up doesn't have to be in one step. It could be 2 steps, 3 steps, 20 steps. From your down dog, all you need to do is get your feet there. So you could take little steps, you could take big steps, you could crawl up there for all I care. The point is to get to the top of the mat. If you're trying to do it in 1 step, or really 2 if you're going to standing, 2 things have to happen, super important. 1, you have to shift forward enough to line up the landing. And 2, you have to get tall enough off the mat, enough lift, enough room to make space for that lower leg. Because here's something you might not have known. If you count the thickness of the thigh, your lower leg is just about the length of your entire arm. So you need to make space. So first is the shift forward. This is kind of like the way you would go forward in a chaturanga. This shouldn't be that tough. But let me give you an example of how it's not gonna work. No matter how tall I get, no matter how much space I make, if I don't shift forward to line this knee up with the landing, because the ankle is going to be directly below the knee. If I don't shift forward enough, I will never land there. I might land halfway and then have to fix it, which is not a problem. But if you're trying to do it in 1 step, you have to shift. So shift forward and pull that knee up so your knee is directly above the line created by your fingertips. So we'll do that first, nice and easy. Lift it, shift it. See where I put this knee, it's directly above the fingers because the foot is going to go directly below it. This is the hard part, requires a little bit of mobility in the shoulders. I want to get as high as possible off the mat. That means I have to press, and even get on my toe instead of my ball of the foot, because that'll give me like another 1.5 inches, 2 inches, depending on how big your toes are. Secondly, I want the most room I can possibly get, so I load this knee to the center. When I press to hollow out, like a cat pose, we're going to talk about that in a second, and I push to the side, you'll notice my shoulders and pecs are closer to the mat than my sternum. This is the hollow spot, as far away as I can possibly get. When I shift and press, I need to push that mat, separate the scapula. Imagine you're doing a cat pose to get as much room as possible. And then you have to compress this hip completely up to touching the chest when they sometimes shift you forward and say, need a nose or need a forehead. If you can't pull this up like this using your core and your hip flexor, this is going to be a rough one for you. So let me show it to you all together with a description. I'm in down dog, leg is up. I shift it way up here. I'm even like off the ball of the foot. I'm using my toe. And then as I finish the shift, I press away, make as much space as possible, and crunch this. They can't get any closer because my thigh's touching my body. Now, my foot will swing into place and I can set it down, heel, toe, and I'm in place. So it's a matter of making space and squeezing up with the leg. Another one that sometimes gets overlooked because we're talking about a fraction of an inch of clearance here is the space of the arms. Some people, for stability or for whatever reason, get their arms wider than their shoulders. The wider they go, the lower I am. The closer they are under my shoulder, the higher I am. And yeah, it might only gain you like 3/4 of an inch, but that might be the space you need to get through. So remember, make the space, shift, and then squeeze. One more time. Regular down dog. Hands are shoulder width. I lift it, I shift it, I press away as I squeeze, and then this sits down, nice and easy, with all kinds of space. Remember, there are many other ways to get up there. I have a few suggestions on how to step up to lunge from down dog if you're interested. They involve just going up part way and then helping. They involve making extra space with your fingertips, also coming in sort of sideways to make the room, and then snapping up. That's more detailed in that tutorial. You can do it. Jumping up, I think this one's actually pretty easy because even if you don't have really flexible hamstrings or you can't make a lot of room, you can always tuck enough to make the space. So here's what it's gonna look like. Down dog, I have to load the spring, that's the most important. I bend the knees, look forward, and then as I do a jump, I try to get my hips above my shoulders, but they don't have to be directly above, like if you're floating. And then I tuck. So sometimes people do this and their legs are kind of sloppy and they end up halfway. Do all of that, but tuck your knees like you're trying to jam both thighs into your chest. So I load the spring, look forward, and then bam, I throw my thighs into my chest. Again, this is sort of like making the room when we compress the one leg up, but we're doing both at the same time. So it's a real quick squeeze, and the more space I can make, the better for the landing. So if I'm kind of dumped into my shoulders, I don't have as much room to bring the legs under me. If I can really press away and unplug them. A lot of times when we're reaching up, we say plug them back in. Well, I almost want to unplug to make room here. One more time. I think this one's pretty easy. The nice thing is you can combine it with a step. So if you jump up just part of the way, take a couple little steps while nobody's looking. So from here, bend the knees, look where I'm headed. This is really important because it'll put your spine in the right spot. Unplug to give myself some room, and then hop. Straighten, stand, you're special. You can hop up. Remember, you can always go part way. So from here, if I need to, if I can't quite get the lift, I can go up to there and take a couple little steps. It still looks cool. You can do it. Floating, probably the hardest one because it takes a little bit of guts and some flexibility in the hamstrings. If you can't plant the mat with straight legs and have a little room left, you're probably not going to float perfectly, but there's a few little tricks and ways to cheat your way in. I'm going to show you those in a second. By guts, I mean you've got to load your hips above your shoulders to counteract the weight of the legs. If your hips stay back, doesn't matter how well you're doing everything else, you're gonna crash land. So here's what I mean. If I do everything right, but I leave my hips behind me, one, I'll never have the height, and two, I won't have that hang time to come in sort of slow and smooth. So I gotta practice loading those hips. One good way is just to tuck up. So from here, I load the spring and I put the hips above me and back. Above me and back. Eventually I start doing it with straight legs. Above me and back. Above me and back. As far up as possible. Inevitably, you're gonna go over on one of these. You either have to catch yourself or roll it out. So from here, if I shoot the hips too far, crash landing. That's okay as long as you have the athletic ability to roll out or you're on a soft surface. You can also step it out like you're in handstand training. So if the hips get too high, I should be able to just release one hand and kind of land in a squat or cartwheel out of it, sort of. Just kind of depends. That's the biggest piece. Hips up to make the space, and your hamstrings have to be flexible enough to fit under you. So I have people do this test a lot. Can you press and then swing your leg, both legs straight by lifting one hip? If you can do that and you're willing to load the hips, you're probably in business. One way you can practice this is to set like a halfway spot. So I know I want to land at the hands, so I look down about here, halfway, and then land. And then as I practice, I come up an inch or so at a time until I'm right in place. I also want to look forward. I need my butt, I need my pelvis in this like anterior tilt to shove some weight away from the legs. That requires me to almost be in like at least a flat back, maybe a back bend. If I'm looking down doing this, it's going to encourage the spine to round. I'll never get that anterior tilt of the pelvis away from the weight of the legs. If I'm looking forward, it helps me get that slight arch or that arch sensation in the back, and it tells me where I'm landing. So when my hands are up, I actually look past them, and as I land, I look down between the thumbs where I'm landing. So watch my neck when I try this. Bend the knees, load the spring, look forward past the hands, and then nice and easy to the landing. Not necessary at all. That's the most important thing. You could do a forward roll to the top of the mat as long as you get there for the next exercise. Keep practicing. You can do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave me a message, and ring the little bell. See you next time.
But the whole point of the machine is to relieve you of that suffering.